federally funded nonprofit corporations. And they had been permitted to lobby, litigate, propagandize, and proselytize for their preferred views in a totally unconstitutional manner, made unconstitutional by the language of Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution. So there you've got the civil service, you've got federally funded private organizations, you've got presidential executive orders, you have the judiciary legislating and purporting to make policy. You know, I hope Roe v. Wade is repealed, but you don't have to repeal Roe v. Wade to get rid of abortion. The Constitution says no person may be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Harry Blackmun, in writing Roe v. Wade, said, of course, if we acknowledge that the unborn child is a person, abortion would be completely impermissible across the length and breadth of this land. That is why it is so important to have members of Congress, such as Kevin, and to have presidents who will make clear that the unborn child is a person, is a human person. And anyone who has had children or who has looked at a sonogram knows that those little babies have brains, they have eyes, they have ears, they have fingers, they have toes. They are not cats and dogs, they're not monkeys, they're not cattle, they're not horses, they are human beings.
That's right.
And under the Constitution, Roe v. Wade, which is binding only on the parties to the case and on none other, under the Constitution, abortion is unconstitutional. All we need is a president who reads the Constitution and says there shall be no more abortion. It's not even a matter of how else is Article 1 disregarded with legislative powers being elsewhere assigned? Well, you can look at the assignment of legislative authority to international bureaucracies. The Asian Development Bank, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the Inter-American Development Bank, the African Development Bank, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, the United Nations. All of these receive our funding. In the case of the IMF and the World Bank, we give them about 16% of their total budget. And they make decisions laundering money from our federal treasury in a manner which is inconsistent with the requirements of the First Amendment. Now here's the biggest scam of all, the Federal Reserve.
That's right.
It's not federal, it has no reserve. And the whole idea of a paper unbacked currency is completely unconstitutional. You can read the Constitution. Why do we have inflation? You know, my wife and I, when we were first married, were loaned a car by her dad, and finally it didn't work anymore. The springs were popping through the seats, the windows wouldn't close, and it had problems with the brakes. We said, well, I guess we have to buy a new car. So we went to the Plymouth dealership. They don't make those anymore. We went to the Plymouth dealership in Brighton, in Alston, and we negotiated the price down to $1,921 for a Plymouth Valiant, which was a terrific car. And it lasted me until I got my government limousine as director of OEO with a chauffeur, nonetheless. In any event, that same car today would cost well over $20,000. Not because the car is that much better, but because the dollar is that much worse.
Right.
Since the Fed was established, the value of the money you earn and save has been vastly diminished. In 2002, the dollar was worth 2 cents of what it was in 1902. In the years from 1787 until 1913, cumulatively, inflation was less than 13%, cumulatively. Since then, it's been well over 1,000% inflation. So these things are all done in violation of the Constitution. That's the bad news. The good news is, if someone of my beliefs and the Constitution Party's platform beliefs and the Constitution beliefs were to become president and were to act on it, that person in the space of a single 4-year term, and that's a whole other speech, and I'm not going to take up all that time to tell you, but in the space of a single 4-year term, you could restore the American Republic.
Amen.
You could buy back, win back, fight back 200 years of liberties lost.
That's right.
All we need is one president once who is committed, who's willing to die, because you've got to be willing to be shot, you've got to be willing to be defeated, you've got to be willing to be poisoned. But if you're willing to put your life on the line, and if you know what to do and how to do it, this country can be restored. God may grant us that at some time, but not while we're killing millions of babies.
That's right.
So you are fortunate to have a couple of candidates who will do everything in their power to prevent the killing of the innocent, who will do everything in their power to stop the killing of the innocent in Iraq, and to stop the killing of our fine young men and women in the military, who will do everything they can to get rid of taxes, to cut government spending. If you look back at what taxes and spending were back in 1973, they were a fraction of what they are now. They've gone up enormously. The standard of living of the United States, the people of the United States, went up every year until 1973. That was the turning point. And then the standard of living of the American family began to go down because of Fed-created inflation and because of higher taxes. And it came to the point where the husband had to work more than one job very often. The wife had to go in the workforce, whether she wanted to do that or not. And all of those combined salaries still yielded a lesser standard of living. Anyway, there's so much we could talk about. I'm very thankful to have been invited. It's wonderful to be back in Massachusetts. I love Massachusetts. I come back at every opportunity. I miss it. I've taken each of my children to visit different places where I grew up, and different experiences that I had. And I hope to be able, I wish I could figure out a way to earn a living in Massachusetts, but with the taxes, I know you have a hard time doing it too. But you have already made a major contribution to the liberty of our country and of your family and your descendants by embracing these two wonderful candidates. And let me simply close by quoting the greatest man in American history, the greatest president, George Washington, who at a crucial moment in the Constitutional Convention rose and said to some of his colleagues who were squabbling, "If, to please the people, we offer what we ourselves disbelieve, how may we afterward defend our work? Our task is to raise a standard to which the wise and honest may repair, recognizing that the event is in the hands of God." God bless you all. God bless our candidates.